In a world where King's Fall and Crota's End were the same raid, a world where Destiny had the smoothest launches of all time, and in a world where King's Fall didn't have a million plates to step on, meet King's Fall into the multiverse. King's Fall is coming back on Friday, August 26th, and it's very, very old. I think this raid is old enough that some of you forgot about it. Most of you haven't played it, and some of you were born after this raid launched. It just can't be the same raid. Much like the Vault of Glass, King's Fall will have some changes for day one. But unlike Vault of Glass, this raid has a lot more room to change. This video serves as both the ultimate refresher of how the encounters worked and the ultimate reminder to King's Fall raid racers and newer players that it needs to change. We have a lot to go over with this raid, having 6 encounters if we don't count the jumping puzzles. So I figured, let me pull in an expert on Destiny 2 who hasn't played Destiny 1, only King's Fall a couple of times, hearing their opinion on it and seeing what would work for Destiny 2.
Hey guys, I'm Above, and as someone with more hours in Destiny 2 than I'd care to admit, I was actually a pretty casual player back in Destiny 1. I was in college at the time and was also working a full-time job, so I never got around to running King's Fall before D2 released. Tragic, I know. But I did hop on the old Xbox last week to run it for the very first time, which gives me a very unique perspective when evaluating King's Fall as a whole. I don't have those nostalgic rose-tinted glasses when comparing King's Fall mechanics to modern-day raids, which makes it easy to spot which encounters would be trivialized in Destiny 2. Now with that said, some of the footage in this video is from players around the community. Their links will be in the description of this video, as well as the music too.
Oh hey, I'm also casting the next raid race on August 26th. Teams racing will follow the lead, give all the insight of what's going on, first to the punch with everything, so be sure to watch me on that day at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, US time. The link to that is also down below. And also on day 1 of the new season, catch me co-streaming the new content. I'll be live on Twitch. Make sure you're there at Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. See you then. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been waiting long enough for a new drop. So, with the Taken King potentially coming back, I teamed up with Nogi-san again to drop Oryx the Taken King, now available in the link down below. You can get shirt, hoodie, crew neck. You can buy this one as well. For a very limited time, everything will be available. The opening encounter of King's Fall works by having 6 relics split in half on each side of the opening room. This room would be familiar to Destiny 1 players since it was the Court of Oryx entrance, but the mechanics were brand new here. Both players who grab half a relic from the left and right side needed to meet in the middle to dunk at the same time to make a full relic in the Thrall statues. This was a relay race more than anything, and I don't see it changing at all for King's Fall's return. I just see it being a nice spectacle the way VoG did with its opening. The roles of the other players is to kill the Taken that tried to stop the relic runner, and to shoot open the opaque doors for the runners. It's simple, it's fun, there's no respawn lockout, so it's easy to keep attempting. And with all the movement tech in Destiny 2, I wouldn't be surprised if this is able to be done with 2 players or even solo. I think since this is an opening encounter and one for almost no loot, I don't see this changing at all. Maybe a light-bearing hive here or there and a champion every once in a while. Other than that, that's already a great opening. In the original King's Fall, the falling ship puzzle had a starting ship to take players off, a sound cue that would let you know when the ship was disappearing, and a ship in the distance to hop onto next. It worked in the atmosphere, feeling like you were breaking into Oryx's HQ. This was followed by 2 plates for 2 players to stand on to open the final wall, and once 2 players made it through that wall, there were 2 plates on the other side of the door to let the rest of the team in, and a secret chest off to the side to collect. The biggest struggle of the ship puzzle's inevitable remaster, and honestly any Destiny 1 jumping puzzle, was always the fact that mantling wasn't in that game. In Destiny 2, players can easily climb ledges they would never be able to in Destiny 1, and this puzzle benefited from that greatly. I don't think there's much you can change with the ship puzzle, but one goofy change I would like to see is adding spikes to the ends of the ships so nobody can mantle, or just disable mantling on these ships altogether, so players actually have to land their jumps just like in Destiny 1. Let's be real though, with heat rises, sword skating, infinite flight for titans with lion rampants and swords, Destiny 2 will just make this not even an obstacle for a lot of players. Anyways, on to the first actual encounter.
Of all the encounters in King's Fall, Totems easily needs one of the biggest facelifts. In Destiny 1, Totems split your team into 3 groups of 2. 2 people defending each totem in each side room, and 2 players defending the center plate. This works like a relay race where one person on each totem will work to collect 10 stacks of Deathsinger's power, then make their way to the middle plate to deposit it. When this happens, you swap places with one of the players defending the middle plate, allowing them to head back to the totem to rinse and repeat this process over and over and over again. This encounter becomes long, tedious, and extremely boring. This is the last time that we'll say that enemy density needs to be cranked up, because as the encounter stands right now, you could ignore the adds entirely with a couple Well of Radiance. We can expect either a champion or Lightbearer to replace the knights and wizards in this encounter, which will be a nice little added challenge when defending the totems. One of the biggest changes I'd like to see is a reduction in the number of rounds you need to go through. Long raid encounters that repeat the same mechanics several times and don't include a boss of some sort typically aren't received all that well by the player base. The Crown of Sorrow entrance is the first thing that comes to mind. Instead of repetition, force players to move around the arena, require us to communicate our cooldowns, and give us limited amounts of time to deposit the Deathsinger's power before it kills us in some capacity. Add a little bit of threat to make it exciting. I have 2 specific changes in mind to accomplish this. The first would be giving the 2 fire team members in the center of the room more of a purpose. Imagine that the encounter starts by stepping on the center plate and gives those 2 fire team members an aura for 30 seconds. With this aura, you can kill the adds in the center room, but without it, you can't. This is reminiscent of the Enlighten mechanic from Garden of Salvation. The buff can only be reacquired by the totem teams depositing their Deathsinger debuff into the center plate. This would ensure that each team needed to rotate quickly to prevent being overrun by adds. The second change would be a separate debuff associated with each totem, 1 red and 1 blue. Once you've deposited the red Deathsinger's power, it locks you out from collecting another red buff for 2 full minutes. Instead, once your Add Clear aura has run out, you'd have to rotate to the opposite totem to collect a blue buff for your next deposit. These 2 changes would encourage far more communication and would give every single member of the team a purpose, which is important if you really want this to feel like the true first encounter of the raid.
The first boss of the raid sporting a general-looking attire. The Warpriest is an Ascendant Hive and one of Oryx's most powerful champions. Having conquered 585 worlds, this cutie patootie definitely slapped in King's Fall. But even this champ is outdated by today's standards. Warpriest had the high ground in this fight, and there was no healing options outside of a couple of very niche perks in Destiny 1. So Warpriest blasting down was a major threat.
As someone who just met Warpriest for the very first time, I know this feeling all too well. The adds didn't really seem like too much of an issue, but Warpriest could definitely mess you up during DPS if you weren't optimized. But in D2, I worry that our abilities will take that threat away entirely.
So in the old mechanics, Warpriest needed all the adds cleared, then 1 person per plate for up to 3 plates. If it glowed white, you were in the correct order. If red, then everyone gets off and you try a different order. The way to determine the plate order was by having at least 1 player position themselves on the other side of the pillar. If the associated symbol glowed white on the pillar, it was theirs to stand on. The last plate in the correct order touched by a player started damage. putting an aura around the player who touched the plate, allowing damage to be done to the Warpriest. This player also had to kill Minor Hive to refresh the aura up to 5 times. After this, Warpriest would summon the to expand, and anyone not behind one of the pillars was dead. But this also killed that pillar once the orb was summoned. After this, it's just rinse and repeat. Avoid killing the adept acolytes or else they enrage all the other enemies. Do this until the Warpriest dipped to 1/3 health and then came Taken instead of Hive, and the rest is the same up until the big man died. So the changes. An easy change to make is pushing Taken enemies to the back or the front of the room and have them spawn every time. It was cool how this raid had phases unlike any other at the time, so this would make players uncomfortable around the room and fit the modern raid. Another change is randomly choosing who gets the aura instead of it being the final plate person, making everyone get familiar with that role and spicing up where damage goes. Then make it a specific pillar players have to run to each round of damage to save themselves, and not guaranteed any. Another change I would like to see is every time you refresh the aura, a new player gets the aura. The final change I would like to see is an expansion on the plate standing. Instead of just 3 plates total, then damage, make it a whole communication game where an order has to be stood on in quick succession. Let's say 7 plates total. It's not too much, but all of this goes a long way in not only preserving the legacy of Warpriest, but expanding on it. Oh, wait, hold on. God damn it, I forgot! Hey, Bungie, add a champion. And a light hive or 2. King's Fall was a unique raid in many ways, but one of the standout reasons was how many secret chests there were and how much downtime between encounters there was, adding to the world building a lot more. The maze doesn't need a change, but Golgoroth, my favorite encounter from the original raid, definitely does. Golgoroth was previously the creation of Zol, the worm god that was in that strike on Mars, turned himself into the Whisper of the Worm, and then got sunset. Golgoroth was made with the purpose to devour Oryx and his family. Oryx instead said, "Hold my beer," and took Golgoroth into a new shape as one of his most powerful champions. Well, next to anti-barriers, baby! He's spooky, he's got a spider-looking back, he makes you move around, and I mean, look at how cute he is. Golgoroth had players killing all their adds on each side, watching out for the adept acolytes that if you killed early would turn all the other acolytes into ogres, and Golgoroth's own ogre blast, which was definitely the most dangerous part. King's Fall just had bosses that felt alive. After killing all the adds, Golgoroth spawned 6 sacks at the top of the arena. Once shot down, everyone except 2 players dropped into the puddle you created. You needed to clear the adds in the pit around the doors, then had 1 of 2 players outside of the pit shoot Golgoroth's back to grab his gaze. This opened up his belly instead of his back, where the remaining 4 players went down to take on that Golgi belly. The gaze had a timer, and Golgoroth shot poison balls that were hard to shoot at the gaze holder. Once the timer was low, the other players shot the back and swapped sides with the first player to align Golgoroth's belly for the other 4 in the pit to shoot. The players in the damage pool would also have to look out for someone down there, becoming a cursed thrall and blowing everyone else up. Just rinse and repeat, take and come out later, then it's over. Now, you may notice there are 6 sacks, but I only described 1 sack for players to shoot down. This is the problem with Golgoroth. Players just never did the encounter the way it was probably intended to be done, since the first sack had such a long timer. The easy fix here is to make the first damage timer fast, then progressively make the damage timers longer as the sacks get shot down. To prevent the same thing from happening or everyone just shooting down all the sacks at once, make it so players have to wait out the timer before they can proceed to the next sack. Finally, make it so players off to the sides who are shooting the back of Golgoroth need to swap with the players in the damage pool. Give them a buff to weapon damage for shooting the back or something. With these changes, Golgoroth would be the elite raid encounter again, and one of the most team coordinated bosses we've ever seen, the way that he was in Destiny 1. Oh, God, I keep forgetting. Champions, baby! Also another light hive. The puzzle, an oddly phallic puzzle, and one that I can't fully show you without getting banned. Bad Hyven was the sponsor of this one. All jokes aside, this puzzle needs no changes. It was the right amount of risk reward. It was trolly. It was a fun maze. It was just awesome. Players had so much freedom in choices, and that's honestly why I love it. You could have players holding plates to let other players across, just like you could do the same to open the route to the chest. Or, instead of doing that, you could sword climb and skip all of that. And you could just get shot right into the room with the on the wall. The only thing I would want here is something ambitious and timeless from Bungie. Expand on that concept of the basketball court of Oryx. But I think the secret Easter egg hunts that purely appealed to the community with no hints, just the community coming together to collaborate, were easily the best part of Zombies. Listen, you guys know if you've been following the channel, I've been on a COD Zombies binge. And if you couldn't tell by the video, these ideas have already been explored countless times in Destiny, and with the basketball court of Oryx needing all of the glowing lights to open the room and reveal the path, it was set to be the next big hunt in Destiny. But ultimately, there was no payoff. Unless you count slamming it down on some friends, there was nothing else here. And I think a nice change would simply be adding more steps after the court is open. Maybe an ornament, maybe a quest, whatever it is, even if it's small to this room. I could see the Touch of Malice quest for the Catalyst ending in here. It's ambitious, yet exciting. Just like the next set of changes.
Next, we have the Daughters of Oryx. This duo was always more intimidating in design and presentation than they were in actual mechanics. But don't underestimate them, they're still pretty feisty. This encounter starts by randomly assigning a player to be torn between dimensions, while your teammates are put back on, you guessed it, plate duty. When the torn runner jumps onto a plate, their teammates are responsible for building a path that only the runner can see. This path is constructed in a counterclockwise format where your teammates must activate the plates in a successive order for the runner to reach the taken relic. This relic is then dunked on the sister who isn't throwing a fit. While the runner is making their way to the taken relic, vandals will spawn above each plate and can easily mess your team up if you're not paying attention. Once dunked, the runner gets a buff called Brand of the Unraveling, which protects both you and your fire team from the sisters during and after DPS. In my honest opinion, this encounter needs major updating, similar to how the Gatekeepers was reworked in the Vault of Glass. The first change I'd make is eliminating the randomness to the relic. I don't really understand why this exists in the first place, and instead, you could have a player pick it up to mitigate the RNG and have the runner change each round. The second change? A whole randomness to the plates and the order in which you need to activate them to require a bit more communication. Third, put a timer on the plates. Make the path disappear if you're not fast enough to put some pressure on the runner. Right now, the timer is way too generous. 4, make the snipers overload chip. Just kidding. But can we please do something about the damn flashbang after killing one of the daughters? And lastly, I think it'd be really cool if you had to kill both of the sisters at the same time. This would require either a very fast bake or some major coordination after the phase is over. Alright, it's time for bomb, 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 bomb.
Oryx was the final fight of Kingsfall, and he was amazing for the first few times. Look, if you beat Oryx, there was an insane amount of adrenaline pumping through your veins, no doubt. But Destiny is a game where you're going to beat a boss multiple times for loot per week in some cases, and Oryx unfortunately wasn't built for week-to-week kills. Instead, this boss was built for the very first satisfying sweet time. I'm going to explain how this encounter works very quickly, because it's a lot and I'd bore you going slow, so please play this video at half speed for this next section if you want to listen closely, or just replay this all you need to. So, here we go. Oryx will move near one of the platforms and give it the old smacky smack. This created a taken light on the platform, and 4 special enemies called Light Eater Ogres will emerge out of the ground. 1 near each platform after every time the taken light passed over the associated plate. The same mechanic as Sisters carried over with the plates needing to go counterclockwise from the orb. A player must claim the spark this time instead of it being random, then run the path like sisters. The ogres need to be killed, then bombs spawn off their bodies. Light Eater Knights need to be sniped after every ogre is killed, and they spawn opposite corner side of the ogres. This leaves one player on ad clear duty like with sisters. When the Torn player reaches the overhead spark and claims it, a tomb ship will fly through the arena and deliver a special knight named the Vessel of Oryx, which will run up the central path. The Torn player must jump down and intercept it, then dunk it on the knight and steal the knight's aura. Stealing the knight's aura makes the knight vulnerable to all players, and also offers protection from damage to all players standing near the player who stole the aura. At this point, every player must converge on the Vessel of Oryx and kill it as quickly as possible. Once the Vessel of Oryx is killed, Oryx prepares to use his Cicada Maiden Call ultimate attack by opening his chest. Every player must shoot the chest. With good damage, Oryx will stagger and no real damage is done. And with no real damage done, you die. Now with the corrupted light spheres the ogres drop, you could just wait 4 phases. Your choice. You just need 16 bombs to blow up to kill Oryx regardless. Let's say you blow up 4 bombs at a time. 4 players must each run to one sphere and stand near it for about 5 seconds until a message acknowledging this appears, and then run back to their aura carried by the Torn player. During this time, at least one other player needs to continue to damage Oryx. As long as Oryx is taking sustained damage while the corrupted lights are detonated, the detonation will do 25% of Oryx's health if you detonated 4 bombs. Any remaining normal enemies will be killed and Oryx will shudder and fall off the side of the arena. Oryx will rise at the end of the arena and begin firing on every player at once, as indicated by white circles that appear in their position and then explode. This is easily countered by just sprinting around in circles. After a short time, the barrage will cease. Now let's say you get under about half health on Oryx. Oryx wouldn't start making you dance, but instead create a bubble in the middle and one by one suck you into 1v1 him. If his shade version didn't die here, you were dead. When Oryx reaches less than 1% health, he'll appear at the far end of the arena and open his chest. One final blast will send him off in space. This encounter could also be done by picking up 16 bombs at once if you wanted to do that instead, lending to a repetitive and debatably boring yet free fight in some cases. Oh my god. Oryx needs a serious update. 4 damage phases no matter what is not fun no matter how you cut it. A boss that shifts his attacks and has damage phases is really cool and feels alive, but it also limits the player potential by locking players to a stagnant amount of damage. And there's a reason why Bungie never really did this again. You could argue it with Shirochi and some other bosses that have phases and make you progress and make you run after them, but not like Oryx. The easiest change here to make is the bombs extending damage instead of doing damage. The more bombs, the more time for damage, leaning into the less experienced player having a nice easy time on a 4 phase, and allowing an experienced player to do 2 or maybe even 1 damage phase if they reach that potential, or have some cracked builds. Oryx was always more of a set piece, so this would immediately make him feel more like a true king again. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, the next change is massive. Champions, baby! Yeah, unstoppable ogres. And I would like to see a light hive here too, taking the place of a shielded knight. This encounter was ultimately a giant set piece, and with these changes alone, it takes Oryx a long way. The final change I would like to see is after the relic runner dunks on the knight, having the team deal with a lot more enemies than just the main knight. This would give the floater player who doesn't have a plate and doesn't have a relic the opportunity to help out massively. Ultimately though, guys, those are the changes the encounters of Kingsfall need to have for it to be more modern. But these can't be the only changes, as we saw with Vault of Glass. It also has to come in the form of loot and fun. Look, we already know the loot is going to be fun, and I'm excited to hold these weapons again, this time with random rolls. I really liked how Vault of Glass had raid-specific perks, but I want to see Bungie add in the Age of Triumph armor this time around with those perks on the weapons. And the hard mode looks of the guns and armor too. Please, please, please bring these back. It goes a long way in replayability. With all of that out of the way, add Light Hive everywhere, make a cool Easter egg, bring calcified fragments back for the catalyst or cosmetic reward, and just make Kingsfall the best remaster a Destiny player could ever ask for. Thank you so much to Above for helping me with this video, and again guys, go check out his channel. Enjoy the raid on Friday. I look forward to casting it, everyone. I'll see you later. Bad hive, dude, what am I thinking with these lines? Honestly, keep in my bad take. I don't even care. Leave this in the video, bro. Why did I write this down? It was like the bad why do I even know this stuff, dude? After the players kill the enemies that spawn near the front of the arena, Oryx will move near After the player kills the enemies that spawn near the front of the arena, Oryx will move near one of the platforms to give it the old one near each platform. One near each platform after every time. One near each platform after every time the taken light passed over the. One near each platform every time. A player must claim the spark this time. This leaves one player in the. One. Dude, I can't fucking do this. One near each platform every. Dude, you're gonna hate me for this. One near. You might want to throw this in the bloopers at this point. I can't do this.